Welcome to Contentstack Pulse. I'm Nicole Quick. I'm your host, and thank you for joining me today for your go-to updates on your latest product improvements and sneak peek into what's the horizon for Contentstack. Today, joining me is none other than the Director of Product Management at Contentstack, John Kelly. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. Let's see what we're going to talk about. Today, we'll be discussing the exciting advancements we made into Q2 and giving a sneak peek into what we're planning on for Q3. Are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
All right. I think the first topic we should talk about is our mission. Like, what is Contentstack doing today, and how are we becoming the most powerful and user-friendly composable DXP on the market? John, can you kind of talk about how all of our tiles fit together into our composable DXP platform?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll definitely go through these kind of bit by bit and kind of break it down. And the way that we kind of have thought about it for several years now and kind of putting together our, multi-year vision and roadmap is basically to, knock down a series of problems that we see along the content lifecycle, development lifecycle space. And so if you look at where most CMSs exist within the sort of end-to-end content lifecycle from sort of a bird's eye perspective, you come to recognize that the CMS is somewhere in the middle of that life cycle. It's not typically at the beginning or typically at the end. It kind of sits in the sort of manage and delivery portions. After that, of course, comes all of your hosting, personalization, analytics, and everything before comes around project planning, project management, collaboration, content creation, etc. So the CMS traditionally kind of sits somewhere in the middle of that content lifecycle, which is a pretty important distinction because when you look at that and you realize that, you sort of ask yourself the question, which direction, if any, do we think we might want to help expand, help sort of bridge the gap, help offer any synergy within the various jobs and tasks that people have to do, both from the technical side as well as from the content authoring and business side, when they're going through the task of creating and managing digital experiences.
That's awesome. Now, how do we work on working these platforms sitting on top of each other like our spine diagram that we showed today?
Yeah, so let's dive in and look at kind of unpack how we as a company evolved from a product company to a platform company to this composable DXP that we're emerging into today. So starting several years ago, the first product in our portfolio was a headless CMS product. It's sort of still the backbone and flagship product we have today. Effectively what it was a managed database, document database with a series of management and delivery APIs intended to solve some very distinct challenges around creating and managing structured data to help hydrate and deliver experiences through a number of channels that weren't just traditionally vanilla web channels, but also things like mobile, in-game, smart TV, as well as other kind of non-traditional digital channels. And then that kind of led to the realization that there were a lot of other companies and vendors around the space also solving for the sort of headless problem and sort of the omni-channel or multi-channel delivery problem. And that kind of led to the rise of all these sort of tiles or patches that you see along the left-hand side here. And we can take it one step forward into our automations product, which kind of was intended to build in that sort of resiliency and backbone into your digital ecosystem. When you, again, look at this patchwork of tiles or sort of, patches, you can almost think about stitching together a quilt. And when you need that, you need two things. One, the patches themselves, which we're seeing here, but two, you need the thread. And no one was really providing the thread to build and assemble that quilt. So that was really where our idea for Automation Hub came in. It's our composability framework to help not only stitch together your various digital experiences, but also provide, again, that resiliency into your organization, into your teams to help offload tasks that are oftentimes menial or error prone or sort of creativity sapping and things that really just shouldn't have to be worried about by human beings, and let the system and the machines kind of handle that for you.
And then next.
Yeah, and that kind of led us forward again into our app framework and what we call the Contentstack Marketplace. And the idea behind the marketplace is really to build customization and extensibility into Contentstack. So we developed an app framework, which is basically a highly elevated version of a sort of legacy concept of extensions within most traditional kind of headless and other traditional CMSs out there. And basically, it's a way to extend the user interface of Contentstack to deliver some custom functionality that might be very bespoke to the authoring experience of certain customers and certain large companies. It might be a way for our partners and certain agencies to actually create and post applications into our marketplace that helps to, again, extend the functionality of our UI and even interact with and talk to third-party systems such as asset management systems, e-commerce platforms, personalization systems, search platforms, etc. And so that's kind of a way to not only sort of extend how authors use Contentstack, but also to ensure that Contentstack itself is the center of gravity for content operations and really bringing a lot of distinct workflows into a single system of record.
Awesome. Thanks, John. And for the last piece, our newest product that came alive in May, the hosting.
Yeah, exactly. So of course, at the end of all this, these services still ultimately distinctly fit in the sort of back-end realm. And one of the things that we also recognized as a problem that was really not a good problem, but rather a bad problem. When I say good problems versus bad problems, it's kind of the good problems are things that allow you to grow your business, be creative, and tackle new challenges. Bad problems are things that are sort of creativity sapping, productivity sapping, and really just like drag your business down. And so we realized that hosting is one of those things that is a little bit boring. It's something that no one necessarily wants to deal with, but everyone has to deal with it. And so we found an opportunity basically to help kind of knock down that problem pin for some of our customers who really just want to tackle the problem once and never have to worry about it again. And also it really helps to have a lightweight hosting solution built on top of all these other experiences that we provide, all these other services we provide, in order to really have that really tight-knit integration. Think about, for example, really brief TLDR on like the Apple AirPods, for example. Apple wasn't the first company to develop Bluetooth headphones. In fact, they were probably not the last, but they were definitely way late to the game. But they saw that within their really tightly knit ecosystem, they were able to provide an experience that really fit into the user's lifestyle. They're not the most, they don't have the best sound quality. They don't have the best noise canceling. They're not the most, longest battery life. But they do fit into a new category, which is basically ease of use. And that's sort of how we thought about developing Launch, which was really to just kind of solve that use case where users don't have really complex needs around hosting. Typically, when we interview customers, we saw that their hosting needs were really straightforward, really simple. And it was just one other thing that had to go through procurement issues for and really had to figure out how to talk to a new support channel. And we decided we can go ahead and just remove some of those problems from their table.
That's really exciting stuff. So from the all-encompassing of expanding our vision to a composable DXP, you can literally create, automate, integrate, and host all in one. Is that what we're kind of saying?
That's right.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and talk about how you're expanding your vision and how the evolution of that vision is happening or execution.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of more visually to talk through our journey a little bit here, we mentioned the initial iteration of our Headless CMS, which is our primary and still our flagship product. Again, it's that simple set of management delivery APIs along with a highly scalable and stable document database. Moving on into what's known as kind of our content platform. That was really the evolution and the release of our Automation Hub product, along with our marketplace and extensibility framework to help our customers really compose this digital ecosystem and this digital stack they're putting together with all these various best of breed technologies. And what we like to say here is that it sort of turns the paradigm of buy versus build on its head. And instead, you're buying in order to build. Building is actually a good thing, but it's only a good thing when you have good problems to solve. Previously, it became kind of a bad word when the idea of building meant you had to get your hands dirty with a lot of bad problems. In this case, we're removing a lot of those off of your plate and leaving you with the good ones. And so building actually becomes a much more pleasant experience.
Awesome. Thanks for the context, John. Now let's dive into the exciting parts and see what we have done over the last quarter. Let's explore the 3 topics, one including Contentstack Intelligence. John, can you enlighten us on how our platform is gaining significance in the topic of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely, Nicole. Artificial intelligence for Contentstack is really top of mind and is paramount to our strategy moving forward. We have a dedicated team internally working on various AI use cases from just general data science to machine learning to NLP, and of course to the emerging topic of large language models.
Awesome. I know that we worked on 2 specific features this quarter. Can you speak to what the team has worked on that goes back to our AI topic?
Yep, absolutely. So within our Headless CMS, of course, the first thing we unlocked is basically the AI-powered assistant. So it's effectively bringing the power of ChatGPT and soon to be other associated language models like Bard from Google and a few others that are emerging as well and bringing that experience and that capability and that power into the actual editorial experience of Contentstack itself. And so it actually exists side by side with the author as they're going through their content authoring and content editorial workflows. They're able to interact with this large language model. And in fact, we do our own sort of prompt engineering in between to sort of broker that conversation to ensure it's really hyper relevant to the user. And in fact, actually allow our customers to modify those prompts and basically to tune the responses and requests and kind of enrich them so that everything that authors interacting with and the responses they're getting effectively are an extension of that individual and an extension of that customer's voice.
And I know we have a ChatGPT connector that was just released in Q2 as well, John. How did that help our customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So within our Automation Hub product, which is, again, that orchestration software to basically build that resiliency and to sort of stitch together the various components within your digital ecosystem. We have a connector there within automations where you can basically use ChatGPT to ingest data from some upstream process or from some upstream system, or in fact, reach out and go get some data from an upstream system, process it, basically transform it, and then pass it to, again, downstream and into a series of other systems or back into Contentstack after it's kind of been processed and enriched with all of your sort of custom voice or lexicon or banned phrases, or basically, associating whatever use case you need to, while taking the power of these large language models and using them to effectively enrich your ecosystem of content or ecosystem of things like release notes for internal use, or things like even to go through and act as an agent when you're generating chatbots and other sorts of technology to offload some of the human processing you need to run your business. And so some use cases here is to, of course, just do basic analysis and summarization of some content. But actually translations is a really interesting use case. In our tests, we tested several dozen languages with long form content across them as well. And the new GPT-4 that our customers have access to actually translates that nearly perfectly. So we still would recommend probably our customers have some manual, just kind of oversight into what's being created and processed and returned. And that's actually where our workflow engine within the CMS comes really in handy, because then after the ChatGPT and other associated large language models is done with the processing, it can actually notify the reviewer that it's ready to be reviewed. And then the reviewer kind of takes the manual step, goes through, checks it, makes any tweaks they need to, and then passes it into publishing for their audience. And then, of course, there's other sort of more edge case type of scenarios around just running out into the web to scan through some web pages. Because, of course, using Automation Hub, we can send it to a variety of, HTTP services or public web pages to do that analysis as well.
That's awesome. I think that really brings us to our next topic of productivity and collaboration. Did you know that our latest total economic report for Contentstack Headless CMS users experienced an incredible 90% in reduction for publishing time? Can you elaborate on which features in Q2 help contribute to that significant boost in user productivity? Maybe one being conditional and repeat paths for Automation Hub?
Yeah, let's jump into Automation Hub a little bit more. So some things we've been working on is really around defining business logic for the rules by which Automation Hub should behave. And so that really is to define conditions by which an automation should execute, filters that should only execute on when certain conditions are met, as well as basically to define some error handling criteria as well. And then repeat paths is really interesting. It basically allows you to iterate or loop through a series of data. So imagine like a list of email addresses or telephone numbers, or some sort of entries of data, or even a list of personalization experiments to go through and define which one's most appropriate for that particular channel. So using basically conditionals, which is the rules or the gates by which an automation should actually proceed, as well as the ability to loop through a series of data, effectively gives users 99.9% of any business logic they could possibly conceive of while creating an automation to help process some interaction or task within their composable stack. So really, it unlocks some tremendous new ways to go through and automate and build that resiliency into your organization.
Wow. You said 99.9%?
I think so. I get to 100.
Awesome. Now, what about our new release preview app that is in our Contentstack marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really exciting new application. Again, it's using our extensibility framework, our app framework, as well as a series of UI locations in our sort of OAuth service to allow users to really quickly install this application into their stack. It actually is being delivered as what's called a full page app. And so it actually is an entire module within Contentstack that's installable via our marketplace. And so it really goes to extend the user interface of Contentstack in a really immersive and powerful way. And basically the app itself is intended to allow a user to preview a point in time in the future. So if you can imagine a digital experience changing over a timeline, both in the past as well as to some series of dates in the future, you really want to know just intuitively as an individual, kind of what that experience, what that channel is going to look like at any given point in time in the future, or to review again those things that happened in the past. And so instead of previewing individual entries or individual articles, or sort of having to stand up a lot of different environments to see things according to the way the developer has sort of created a snapshot of them during a point in time, Release Preview actually allows you to basically go through and inspect your entire digital experience at any point in time, both past and present.
Now, the next one that we have is our workflow Kanban app. Can you explain what that's helping with?
Yeah, this is really critical for this concept of user productivity and basically helping us to complete the content lifecycle within Contentstack. And so, again, just to kind of recap, we are looking at Contentstack within the entire content lifecycle, and it sits somewhere in kind of that middle phase. But we're really pretty focused on expanding our use cases within sort of the project management, collaboration, productivity space as well, to sort of maybe offload some of the tasks that some of our users have to do, where they have to reach out to some third-party tool to move a little box from left to right in order to just come back into the CMS to get their job done anyway. So when we talk to users, we find an opportunity that we can really help to focus their attention more into the CMS for a longer duration of their day, and to get more done within a single source of truth. And so we developed the Kanban board to basically act as that project management tool. And of course, it can integrate with third-party tools as well. So we have customers today who are integrating these things with project management tools like Jira or Asana or Monday. But of course, it can also basically just be a standalone workflow tool, because it is effectively just representing every entry within a content type in each workflow stage that entry happens to be in. And so it basically is your entire content workflow visualized on this board.
Now let's shift our focus to our third topic, which is cloud services. John, can you tell us about our new Azure EU availability?
Yeah, absolutely. So Contentstack is now a multi-cloud company. We have been within our North America data centers, both for Azure as well as AWS for some time. We recently launched the availability of Azure within the EU cloud. We've had EU cloud available through AWS, but now it's available through Azure for the entirety of the content management application and services. And so we are officially a global company across multiple data centers. And of course, our customers can choose whichever cloud suits them the best. But the performance is nearly identical between the two. And of course, all the data within either cloud you choose is available globally. What's interesting about choosing the EU cloud for either AWS or, in this case, Azure, is of course both of them are fully GDPR compliant. So we do accommodate customers who kind of need to have that level of compliance and need to have data residency within EU borders.
All right, John, now tell us what's going to happen next.
Yeah, let's look at a little sneak peek of the roadmap for both the CMS, and we'll talk about some AI stuff as well. So first and foremost, we'll talk about a concept called teams and taxonomy. Basically, this is really important for very large companies who typically have a lot of different data and a lot of different teams and groups of individuals who are interacting with the same content models, and oftentimes they're members of the same basic role as well. But what's really important is that oftentimes they need to sort of stratify access to that content according to some logical categories or separators. And this is really where the concept of creating teams within a content project and also organizing that content by taxonomies becomes really critical. So not only are taxonomies useful in generating sort of defined lists or sort of dictionaries or term glossaries, so that authors really have only a specific pick list to choose tags for a specific entry. It's also really helpful when generating URLs. You can actually then sort of organize your content within this larger hierarchy in order to then, of course, automatically generate, for example, a path in your URL to find that actual entry. It's also really important to realize that headless CMSs traditionally aren't organized hierarchically. They're organized in sort of this flat structure. But of course, websites and applications are hierarchical. And so taxonomies and the ability to nest terms within those taxonomies is really useful for those cases where you want to sort of map and organize all of your content into a directory, into a folder structure, or some sort of tree-like structure to map to the actual digital experience you're trying to create.
Awesome. And what about branch and merge and compare in our headless CMS?
Yep. So Contentstack has a concept of branches, which is basically the ability to clone not only your content models, which is your content types and global fields, but also all of your assets and your content as well, effectively cloning your entire content repository along with the structure of that data. So we've actually developed some additional tooling within our some additional APIs, some lightweight UI, and some CLI tools to basically allow users to really easily not only compare changes between two branches, but also then merge those changes between those two branches for the content structures themselves.
I'm super excited to see this happen for Q3. I know we have a couple more features that are tied to Contentstack Intelligence. Can you speak about the Help Center and our customer language tuning?
Yep, absolutely. So using basically our ability to sort of understand what users are trying to do within the system, we're able to sort of infer kind of what's most helpful to them when they're actually looking up our documentation. So we're actually bringing all of our documentation into the application, into basically the UI, and giving them a consolidated sort of help center where they can pop that open on the sidebar and basically start to ask a question, start to look up anything across our vast documentation center. And of course, we'll start to be able to populate things that are most useful and relevant to them based on kind of where they are in the app, how they've come along their sort of customer education journey, and really start to like bring the information to the user instead of having them to sort of reach out and search for it.
That is a really cool experience. So you don't have to open up a second browser. Everything's right there. So it helps productivity and finding things faster inside our platform. Is that
exactly
correct?
The quickest and the fastest we can sort of reduce that time to value and sort of bring value to the user in the shortest amount of time possible means that they'll have the best odds and chances of being successful using Contentstack.
That's awesome. And what about customer language tuning? What does that help? How does that help our customers?
Yep. So this is sort of the next step in our evolution in our research with AI, which is basically the ability to tailor some of these off-the-shelf large language models. We talked about Google Bar, we talked about our current ChatGPT integration, and really to what we would say speak in the voice of the customer. And so it's actually our sort of, we call it like our brain intelligence layer, where it actually is intended to, the customer can upload their brand guidelines, upload things that are important to them, upload things like required lexicons or any sort of banned phrases or any sort of tone that needs to look out for or tone that needs to match. As well as a series of examples. And so they can point it to public URLs, they can point it even to content types within Contentstack. And then the LLM, the actual brand intelligence layer, will go through, parse out that content, understand it, and then return responses as the editor is talking to and interacting with the AI assistant in the voice of the customer. So in the voice of either the author based on the stuff that person's written previously, or just using basically the overall kind of brands guidelines that were established for the entire company. And of course, one thing I can mention actually is that this is all highly secured. And so none of this content is able to be leaked out into, those public repositories or APIs. And it's all stored still within Contentstack. So it's from day one intended to be used within our highest level enterprise customers.
That's awesome. Now, all of these new things that are happening, talking about our execution of our vision, can you talk about the next steps of where we're going?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just going to kind of cover on our recap along with a snapshot of our roadmap. The next kind of layer here is what we're calling intelligent content, which is basically to layer in, that's a very intentional way of saying it, sort of these intelligent services across the entire content lifecycle and workflows to really help teams move faster, to help users be more productive, to be more accurate, to be more on-brand and focused, and really to help them get more done in less time within Contentstack by leveraging these services that are really, really rapidly gaining adoption.
That's amazing news. And after that, what do we do?
Yeah, so just a little, again, this is a bit of an Easter egg and a sneak peek into sort of the further evolution of Contentstack, looking a little bit more than just next year. But it's really a transition, and the simplest way I can put it is a transition from sort of imperative content creation and publishing to declarative, in the sense that right now, and within almost any system and service and tool out there that users would use, you kind of have to understand how the thing works. But really what you're trying to do is tell it what it should do. And so this is a transition to allow these sort of focus on what they want to accomplish, and rather less on understanding how the actual tool works. The analogy I like to give here is people don't buy cameras, they buy pictures, right? But they have to use the camera to take the picture.
We're really excited, and thank you so much, Don, for your time today. And that concludes our episode of Contentstack Pulse, and we can't wait to see what Q3 to Q4 holds for us. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you all next time.